Well, that may have been the most critical 2 hours of the election campaign so far. The leaders duking it out in front of millions of viewers from the Canadian Museum of History in Gatineau.
So soon, inside that building right there, all 5 leaders will step up to answer questions from journalists and give their assessments of tonight's debate. We will bring them all to you live. So this is the National After the Debate, a special edition focused on this crucial moment for the campaign, for the country, for you.
Yeah, Canada is grappling with so many pressing questions about the pandemic, climate change, reconciliation, the cost of living. Did the leaders have the answers? Did they win your vote? Well, tonight, the analysis, the context, and of course, the highlights. Take a look.
When Afghanistan was falling, there were 1,200 Canadians and hundreds more translators and others waiting for help from Canada. What did Mr. Trudeau do? You called an election, sir.
He says all the right-sounding things, and he's working on reassuring everyone that he's right there as a strong leader. But he can't convince his candidates to get vaccinated. He can't convince his MPs. You ask about how we're going to convince the quarter of Canadians who still don't think climate change is real. Well, Mr. O'Toole can't even convince his party that climate change is real because they voted against that.
We just heard Mr. O'Toole and Mr. Trudeau argue about who's worse. And honestly, it's a tough question to answer. Let me tell you, you're not stuck with these two. Better is possible. And how do you restore trust in a country as wealthy as ours, a G7 nation in the 21st century that still does not provide clean drinking water to every single Indigenous nation?
I actually had to pull my jaw up, which just dropped, when I heard what Mr. Blanchette said. I invited Mr. Blanchette to get educated about systemic discrimination. I extend that invitation again. I would be happy to educate him.
It's nice to want to educate
This
me.
is my time, sir. It is.
Thank you. So nice time to insult people.
That was not an insult. It was an invitation to educate yourself.
Spicy is what we call that. Let's get right to Chief Political Correspondent Rosemary Barton, just outside the Canadian Museum of History. Rosie, you had a front row seat to that debate. You asked questions about affordability. What stood out for you?
Well, I mean, I think if you even look at the makeup on the stage and where people were positioned, you see who was the main target, and that, of course, was Justin Trudeau in the middle of that stage. There were lots of attacks on him very directly. What probably played to his disadvantage, though, frankly, was the format. Justin Trudeau likes to get into it with his opponents. He likes to push back and forth, and there wasn't as much opportunity for him to do that in this case. So the narrative that he is trying to create around Aaron O'Toole, particularly that he's not going to do what he says he's going to do, or that he says different things to different people, he didn't quite get as many blows landed, I would say, as he would have hoped to. I'm not sure that he comes out, deeply damaged by what happened tonight, but I will say that I don't think that he comes out ahead either. If we all agree that this was the moment where Canadians were going to tune in and start to get some perspective on what this election was about, I'm not sure how much they're going to walk away with tonight. I will say that everybody, though, had their moments. Annamie Paul, probably her best debate performance so far, just because she really decided that she was going to throw caution to the wind and try and hit blows with everyone. Jagmeet Singh, tried to make his policy about anecdotes and people he met. That's sort of an age-old tactic in politics. And Aaron O'Toole wasn't shaken by any of the attacks by Justin Trudeau or others. So, listen, it's always hard to gauge how these things are going to play out. But certainly, if you were looking for a good sense of how this election is going to finish tonight, I'm not sure that you got it.
All right. Thank you so much, Rosie. And you're not going anywhere. We will get back to you in just a few minutes' time, along with the At Issue panel. Thanks so much.
All right, so our CBC News Parliamentary Bureau, of course, digging into what the leaders had to say. David Cochrane is in contact with people inside the campaign, so we will hear what they are saying tonight. But first, the moments that likely mattered. So, Evan Dyer, you've got that angle.
Adrienne, the format was designed to pit the 5 leaders against each other in a series of one-on-ones, but as Rosie said, Justin Trudeau was clearly the main target during at least the first part of this debate, and some of the attacks got pretty personal.
I do not believe that Mr. Trudeau is a real feminist. Thank you, Jane Philpott. Thank you, Jody Wilson-Raybould. Thank you, Selena Cesar Chavez.
I think, Ms. Hall, you'll perhaps understand that I won't take lessons on caucus management from you.
And things also got personal between some of the other leaders when the debate turned to the issue of systemic discrimination.
I recognized the existence of systemic racism in June 2020. And then, what happened? It became a political tool against Quebec.
When I heard what Mr. Blanchet said, I invited Mr. Blanchet to get educated about systemic discrimination.
It's nice to want to educate
This
me.
is my time, sir.
It is.
Thank you.
So nice time to insult people.
That was not an insult. It was an invitation to educate yourself.
When the debate turned to China and the imprisonment of Michael Kovrig and Michael Spavor, the Liberal leader found himself fighting off charges of inaction.
Canada's voice has been absent, Mr. Trudeau. We have not worked with our allies on Huawei. We have not stood up for the 300,000 Canadians in Hong Kong. We've not fought for the two Michaels, and we have to get serious with China.
If you want to let the Michaels and get the Michaels home, you do not simply lob tomatoes across the Pacific.
Throwing tomatoes might not be the solution, but I would submit humbly that doing nothing might not be the solution either. The Mr. Trudeau's record on human rights is not perfect.
On climate, Justin Trudeau accused the Conservatives of having a weak plan and the NDP of having no plan. They accused him of having plans he failed to turn into reality.
The cost of inaction is an entire town of Lytton being wiped out by a climate forest fire. The cost of inaction is forest fires and flooding and heat waves that mean Canadians lose their lives. 6 years, and he failed you, and it cost all of us.
We need to talk about science. We need to talk about experts.
Absolutely.
We agree on that, you and I both. So how is it that the experts that have rated our plan on climate to be an A have rated your plan to be an
Who are these
F?
experts?
I rate your track record an F, Mr. Trudeau.
This was a debate where formats didn't really allow the leaders to raise their own topics. For example, one topic that the Liberals had tried to hammer the Conservatives on in previous French debates, gun bans, barely came up. Same with pipelines, barely came up. Aaron O'Toole was obviously a lot more comfortable tonight, speaking his own native language than he was in the previous two debates. But you would have to say that nobody really had a standout moment. Nobody really landed a crushing blow on arrival in this debate.
All right, Evan Dyer, thank you.
Thanks, Adrienne.
Now, the party campaigns had definite goals going into this debate. Let's check the score. David Cochrane is also at the Museum of Civilization, and he's been talking to the political parties to see how they are already spinning tonight's debate. David.
Yeah, Andrew, let's start with the Conservatives, and they're pretty happy with how their leader, Aaron O'Toole, performed tonight. They felt that he was calm, he was measured, he was able to display a command of their platform and score some attacks on Justin Trudeau in particular. On climate, they're quite proud of the line where he criticized Justin Trudeau's lack of progress on the environment by saying he has ambition but not achievement. They also liked how he was able to keep affordability issues in the economy front and center, having specific answers on how he'd help people by doubling things like the workers' benefit. And they think he struck a good tone. Justin Trudeau was at the center of the stage and at the center of a lot of the attacks, and his goal tonight was to draw a stark contrast between him and the Conservatives, who he says are too divisive, and between him and the NDP, who he says are not detailed enough. And on climate, they feel they're able to land a good one on Aaron O'Toole by saying that his party voted against climate change being real at their convention earlier this year, and pointing out that Aaron O'Toole's plan to get 90% of Canadians vaccinated is unrealistic when he can't even get all of his caucus and his candidates to be vaccinated. With Jagmeet Singh, it was the battle over who has a better plan to fight climate change, with Justin Trudeau turning on Jagmeet Singh and saying, the experts give us an A, they gave your platform an F. A note of frustration from the Liberals. Aaron O'Toole said, look at page 14 of the Liberal platform. They're going to tax the sale of your house. That is not what the policy says. The policy is to tax the sale of houses that are flipped to juice the real estate market. Justin Trudeau was not able to respond to that claim by Aaron O'Toole because of the moderator. And on the NDP, they had pretty much a fairly consistent and steady critique of Justin Trudeau. Their goal is to stop soft progressive voters from abandoning them for the Liberals in the stretch run of the campaign, attacking him on pharmacare, a long-standing promise with no money in his platform, saying at one point that Justin Trudeau and Aaron O'Toole are fighting over who is worse, and they think Jagmeet Singh's best line of the night was to say that you can do better than this, your choice is an NDP government.
All right, David Cochrane, thank you so much.
So as we wait for each leader to come out and try to convince Canadians they won the debate, this is a pretty good time to mention a Canadian win that needs no political spin, just a little top spin.
All the way into the final.
Well, look at that. Montreal's Leylah Fernandez is heading to the U.S. Open tennis final on Saturday. Tonight, she beat the second seed in a very close three-set match. The overnight sensation, if you will, who turned 19 3 days ago, will get the chance to match Canadian Bianca Andreescu. She was also 19 when she won the U.S. Open 2 years ago. So, all right, back to the debate. Tonight was all about the leaders trying to earn your vote. So we invited 4 undecided Canadians to watch with us. Cannot wait to talk with them ahead in the show.
But in the meantime, we're going to go back to Rosie with At Issue.
Yeah, lots of people like to hear from At Issue before they decide how they feel about it. So let's do a quick round with the At Issue panel as we stand by and wait for the leaders to come out and take some questions from journalists. The At Issue panel tonight, Chantal Hébert, Andrew Coyne, Althea Raj, and Elamine Abdelmahmoud. Good to see everyone. Thanks for staying up a little later with all of us and watching the whole debate. I guess I want to know what you thought and whether you think this changes anything. Chantal, let me start with you.
I can't tell you if it changes anything. I suspect that some of the clips from tonight will get better play when they are isolated from a very... I'm not sure, I'm like Mr. Blanchet, I'm not sure what word to use to describe the format of the debate we just watched. But I do think that Erin O'Toole had a good night, probably the better night between he and Justin Trudeau. Managed to get some of his points across, did not get into too much trouble, not too many punches landed. And the Green Party leader, Annemie Paul, had the best night of her campaign, I'd say possibly by default. But still, she did get a lot of airtime, and I think there were times when she used it quite effectively.
Andrew Coyne, and I will say, just being there, I did feel like Mr. Trudeau was a little boxed in by the format, and I don't know if that's fair, but give me your assessment.
Well, I don't think the format did anybody any favors, quite frankly. I don't think anybody would have taken a great deal of substance out of this debate or learned a great deal new in terms of the content of their platforms. That may not be what these are for. If people are tuning in who don't pay a lot of attention to politics and are trying to take the measure of these leaders, then I agree with Chantal. The leader who did the most good for her party was Annemie Paul, who I think if people were just casual readers of the news might have thought terrible things about her before this debate. She came across as measured and cool and competent. I also agree that between the two frontrunners, Mr. Trudeau looked rattled, was over-caffeinated. Mr. O'Toole was more calm, more collected, more composed, and to the extent that people are making judgments about the leaders on this rather than the content of their platforms, he probably did himself more good than Mr. Trudeau today.
Althea, your thoughts?
I agree with most of my colleagues, both of them. I think that Mr. Trudeau started off being calm and then seemed to get frustrated as the debate progressed. The format did not allow them to interact much with one another. In the French debate last night, we had more of that interaction, and in the TVA debate, we had a lot more of it. And it's like he was looking for a fight and a one-on-one with Erin O'Toole and even with Jagmeet Singh. And the format was so bizarre that they would attack one another, and then they would go to somebody else that wasn't part of the interaction. And then by the time they looped back for the rebuttal, weren't really sure what topic you were talking about. So frankly, it was a mess. Right. So it's really hard to say who did better. I agree that Erin O'Toole had a better night than he did yesterday, for example. I think the fact that Mr. Singh and Mr. O'Toole were debating in their first official language was a lot more helpful to them. I think that from Mr. O'Toole, you got somebody who was calm, who also managed to get a number of points that were in his platform across, while Mr. Trudeau seemed so energized that he couldn't really get the words and the attack lines out.
Okay, I want to get Elamine in before Mr. O'Toole comes out, because we are waiting for scrums from leaders. So Elamine, I may cut you off, but go ahead, friend.
Of course. I mean, I just have to say there is a world where this format works as a debate. This was not the night. This was not the night for it. And like when I think about, for example, Aaron O'Toole's performance, he was someone who I think was trying to prove to Canadians who he is and introduce himself. I think he probably had the best line of the night, but he kind of got buried over people speaking over him. But the best line of the night for me was Aaron O'Toole turning to Justin Trudeau and saying, "Look, Trudeau is very good at ambition, but not very good at delivery." That was a standout line that condensed, I think, something that is out there in the ether about Justin Trudeau. And yes, go ahead.
Okay, I gotta, I'm sorry, I'm cutting you off, but I will come back, and you can start when we come back. We don't want to miss these scrums. This is when journalists ask some follow-up questions to the debate. Here's the Conservative leader, Aaron O'Toole.
Personal carbon savings accounts. If you're successful in the election, if you're Prime Minister, can you tell us how quickly that program will be brought in and what you'll do with Mr. Trudeau's carbon tax in the meantime? When will it end? When will the carbon savings account start? And what happens in the in-between?
Well, this is part of the reason why we put out our plan in April. We wanted to show provinces another option to price carbon, to make our Paris commitments, but to also have economic recovery. So those conversations will go underway. We want to partner with the provinces, and I think after 6 years of Mr. Trudeau having an Ottawa knows best approach for everything, I want to see more collaboration within our Confederation, and climate change will be an important part of that.
Mic number 2, please.
Good evening, Mr. O'Toole. Andrew Lawton, True North. Thanks in large part to high vaccine uptake, we've seen cases and hospitalizations decouple. A lot of restrictions, even some under federal control, still remain in place, though, for vaccinated and unvaccinated individuals. If you're Prime Minister, what is the metric you're going to use to decide when the pandemic is over, basically? Is it going to be cases, hospitalizations, vaccine rate? What is the end result for you?
We're going to work with public health officials to make sure that we can keep people safe. That's got to be the priority, not to have a fifth wave after a fourth wave, and to balance the economy. Our main concern with Mr. Trudeau, he was so slow on just approving rapid testing. That is a tool that, if used properly, can be a very important build-on to vaccines and to distancing. It lets us have openings. That's where we want to see more federal leadership to balance off the need to get our economy back on track.
We'll take a question from the phone now. Operator, is there a question on the phone? Operator, is there a question from the phone? So we will take a question from the room and we'll come back to the phone and try and compensate that question. Mic number 1, please.
Thank you. Mike Lapointe from the Hill Times. Mr. O'Toole, Conservatives are the traditional party that look to balance the budget as quickly as possible. After a year of unprecedented spending, if elected, what would you do to bring the government finances back to normality?
Great question. Mr. Trudeau is spending $424 million per day more than we're bringing in. So we launched Canada's Recovery Plan, which is going to focus on getting our economy back on a strong footing, getting people working, particularly highly impacted sectors that we want to see. We want to focus on work and get our budget back to balance over the course of the next decade. The Parliamentary Budget Officer just confirmed our plan. That is what we need, a plan to get back to a fiscal stability in our country so that we safeguard our programs and avoid a debt crisis that Mr. Trudeau is leading us towards.
So we will try the phones once again. Operator, is there a question from the phone, please? From the phone, please. Mic number 2, please. Mic number 2, please.
Thank you, Mr. O'Toole. Rosina Spore from the UK Daily Telegraph. There's been very little foreign policy discussion in the campaign so far. So if you were Prime Minister, how would you set yourself apart from Mr. Trudeau on the world stage? And what message do you have for Canada's closest allies like the UK in terms of international collaboration on everything from Afghanistan to climate change?
Well, as I said this evening, I think it was a failure of leadership for Mr. Trudeau to call an election and leave behind 1,200 Canadians and hundreds of other translators and people that are at risk in Afghanistan because they served with our forces, with our diplomats. Canada doesn't leave people behind. and Mr. Trudeau put himself first. I want our NATO allies, our Five Eyes allies to know we will be there as a strong partner. We will stand up for human rights. We have a lot of concerns with the conduct of the communist government in China, and we will look at innovative partnerships like my Kanzuk initiative. There's lots of interest to work even closer with the United Kingdom, Australia, and New Zealand.
So we will try from the phones once again. Operator, is there a question from the phone? Mic number one, please.
Mr. O'Toole, Murad Hamadi from The Logic. Your platform states that you will, quote, pass strong legislation to protect privacy more effectively than the current government's weak Bill C-11. What specifically is wrong with Bill C-11, and how do you propose to regulate businesses' use of data and AI?
We have been speaking to people about the need to allow people to have ownership and control over their footprint, over their privacy, particularly in a digital age. We need to make sure that there's ownership there. It's also why we support open banking, for example, so that people can own that and control it and have certainty with respect to their personal information. Canada's recovery plan is about making sure our economy bounces back and that we safeguard Canadians in the digital space.
Mic number two, please.
Good evening, Jenna Kokula with The Wire Report. In your run to be party leader, you said you wanted to defund the CBC's digital services and cut its English TV services by 50%. Now you've kind of walked that back in your party platform. What changed for you since then?
What I've said is I think with the digital age, you know, my own kids watch a lot of streaming services and YouTube. We need to make sure that we preserve content creators in Canada, that we have a competitive landscape, and that in some areas like English television and digital, we shouldn't see the government competing with the private sector that is trying desperately to innovate and hold on, particularly with advertising. So we'd like to see a modernization, to see less of that competition, less government subsidizing newspapers and other organizations, taking that state competition out and making sure we support the creation of private sector content and creation.
And let's try the phone line once again. Operator, is there a call on a question from the phone?
Yes, our first question tonight is from Dylan Robertson from Winnipeg Free Press. Please go ahead, your line is open.
Mr. O'Toole, why won't you tell us how many of your candidates are vaccinated?
As you know, I encourage all Canadians to get vaccinated. They're safe and effective for use, and I've been fighting for better access to supply, and I will respect personal decisions about healthcare, and we need to work together to overcome any questions that people may have. In fact, I was proud to work with Mr. Singh and the other leaders tonight to film a video talking about how important and safe vaccines are in our fight against COVID-19. What I haven't liked with Mr. Trudeau's pandemic election is this attempt to divide people when we should be working together in our fight against COVID-19.
Operator, please, we'll take another question from the phone. Mic number one, please.
Jean-Sébastien Cloutier, Radio-Canada. Bonjour, Monsieur
Radio
O'Toole.
Canada.
Bonsoir.
Good evening, Mr. O'Toole. You heard Mr. Legault today in Quebec saying or suggesting that a conservative minority government might be the best idea and that the other parties are centralizing. Did you see that as support from Mr. Legault? What was your reaction to that? Well, as I said, I have a great deal of respect for Premier Legault and his leadership during this pandemic. We have a lot of common issues to address, including the economic recovery. And I have a contract with Quebecers because I will always respect provincial jurisdiction. And I will focus on partnership. And I want to work closely with all the provinces, including Premier Legault.
Let's try the phone lines once again. Operator, is there a question on the phone?
Yes, thank you. The next question is from Raymond Filion, TVA. Please go ahead. Your line is open.
Merci.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Mr. O'Toole. I wonder whether you agree with the question on Bill 21 posed to Mr. Blanchet regarding the protection of French. Do you believe those are discriminatory laws? Well, as I said, I will always respect Quebec's jurisdiction and take an approach based on partnership. I believe we have to respect the language, the culture, and secularism. So I will always respect that, and I intend to work in close cooperation on language, in particularly Bill 1 for federally chartered companies. So I think we need to respect all the provinces, and that would be my approach.
It's our time to work together and respect all provinces. We need to partner, particularly coming out of COVID-19, and respect provincial jurisdiction and try and come together to partner. I think we need to fight against the decline of the French language. I think having French as the language of work, this is an area with Bill 101 and the federally regulated enterprises in the province. I think it's a matter of fairness that those large players like the banks and others take the same approach that medium-sized players do, making French the language of the workplace in Quebec.
That's all the time we have. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup.
Okay, that was providing some time for journalists to ask questions after the debate. We're only going to get a couple minutes between him and the next leader, but in that time, I'll bring in my colleague, the CBC's David Cochrane. I should tell you that at the end of these scrums, Adrienne will be back for a full panel with lots of time for them to dig into everything they've heard here. David, I will say one of the things that struck me, and you can comment on the scrum there, one of the things that struck me about Mr. O'Toole was he wasn't actually attacked that much by the other party leaders, and so I think he was able to sort of get his points across fairly safely without any other damage being done. Okay,
yeah,
Monsieur Blanchet is up, and he's coming out early, so... I'm sorry, David, we will... Mr. Blanchet is anxious to speak to journalists, so here's Yves-François Blanchet, the Bloc leader.
In Canada, it began with a bunch of insults against Quebecers. We were said that we were xenophobic and racist at the beginning of the show by the moderator. That's quite extraordinary. And when we wanted to talk about francophones outside Quebec, we were told no, it wasn't going to happen. So you can draw whatever conclusions you like from that. Now, I think Quebecers seriously need someone to watch over them now. Journal Le Devoir. Now, maybe that was the moment of the debate you remember best. Well, how could I not remember it? How could I not remember it? You're told you're a xenophobic and a racist. I'd just like to ask you a question. You also had some words with the moderator. What exactly happened? Well, one thing at a time. I said it was a little bit difficult. I have nothing against her, of course, but I think she was a real incarnation, but what people were looking for tonight. Did you note that, the first thing, the beginning of the show is to talk about Quebecers as racist. Now, which one of the leaders said, hey, wait a minute, Quebecers are not racist or xenophobic? No. They seem to think it was perfectly normal. It's an English debate, so we'll say that Quebecers are racist and xenophobic. Mr. Trudeau didn't say anything, even despite his great affection for Quebec, and maybe Mr. Singh felt comfortable about it, and nobody else reacted. So I said to the moderator, because it wasn't personal, and I didn't see anything personal, well, maybe Ms. Paul a little bit, but other than that, it's really the incarnation of this other country where we're holding the debate. Perfectly normal not to talk about francophones and Acadians outside Quebec. It's perfectly normal not not to talk about the Charter of the French language and say, do you disagree with what Quebec wants? No, everything was set up so that we wouldn't be able to talk about those issues. Only the issues that they had decided on. Yes, I just wanted to talk about that. Do you have the sense that Quebec was on trial tonight? No, not really, because when you're on trial, the trial is before the judgment. And I think that we were already at the judgment stage and the sentence stage. The sentence aimed at Quebec that is racist and xenophobic. I've tried to get into the discussion on that following those horrible and rude accusations made against us. Quebec wants religion to be outside state affairs. Religion has never protected women's equality in public affairs, and it will never do that. So I think we should stop trying to sell people on the idea that secularism is racist. It's extremely progressive, and that's something that religion is not. It's something private. Religion is private. It's not part of state affairs, and therefore now we're being called racist, and that makes everyone happy in Toronto. A question on the phone? Is there a question on the phone?
Thank you. Merci. Next question is from Madeleine Bray-Morin from Radio-Canada. À vous la parole.
Bonsoir, Monsieur Blanchet.
Good evening, Mr. Blanchet.
Bonsoir. Est-ce que cette question-là peut influencer les prochains jours?
Do you think that will influence the next few days of the campaign? What the moderator did, and especially that as opposed to your exchanges with the other leaders? No, I think that the leaders are probably a little uncomfortable about the question, and but at the same time, it didn't seem to really bother them. Now, will that influence the rest of the campaign? Well, we were already establishing that Quebecers did not really need a majority for any of the parties, and now it's perfectly clear that we need someone that will protect the interests of Quebec. And normally I say promote, but now I'm saying protecting, because there was a real attack on Quebec tonight, and I think it's clearer than ever before. And there aren't many candidates out there in that parliament that want to protect Quebec, but we will be there to do that.
Hello, Brett Forster, APTN News. At one point during the debate, you described the nation-to-nation relationship as one between two equals where neither party imposes upon each other. The Liberals passed Bill C-92, which is legislation that returns jurisdiction over child welfare to Indigenous nations. This bill is being challenged by Quebec in court. It's a constitutional challenge. Are you willing to concede that the nation-to-nation relationship, as you described it earlier today, will require power sharing and jurisdictional sharing between Quebec and First Nations?
I would invite you to ask this question to the Premier of Quebec.
Micro numéro 1, s'il vous plaît.
Oui, bonsoir, Lina
Yes,
Dib,
good
la
evening.
Canadienne. Bonsoir, Monsieur Blanchet.
Good evening, Mr. Blanchet. I'd like to come back to what Mr. Legault said this morning, because you didn't really respond. Now you know exactly. You probably heard me this morning, but my colleague who was on the bus said that you didn't really respond because you hadn't heard everything. Wait until I ask my question, please. So I guess you were thinking about this all day, but we all understood that Mr. Legault is telling Quebecers to vote for the Conservatives. And I would like to know now, you said to Mr. O'Toole at the end of the debate, now Quebec really needs a watchdog. Now, how could someone have heard what I said in private to Mr. O'Toole? No, it was when you were on the set. So I'm being asked questions about what I said to Mr. O'Toole after the show. That's something else. Now, would you concede that Mr. O'Toole will become Prime Minister and then he will take votes away from you? Well, I mean, first of all, that was a very lengthy question, and I gather I'm going to have to give you a lengthy answer. Now, my impression is quite different. I don't know who you're talking about when you say everyone. Now, obviously, the Premier of Quebec wants to ask certain things of people who are going to form a government. And I heard a Prime Minister say that there are three parties, or the Premier say that there are three parties that are centralizing, one that's less, and I want a minority government. And, you know, when we're not talking about, so obviously this is an invitation to consider the Bloc Québécois as well. So I think the shortcut that I've been hearing all day is not founded, because the Premier of Quebec is really asking people also to consider the Bloc. And I want to remind you that when we're talking about health transfers, it's 3.5% per year. It's not even 6%. And there needs to be a lot more, many billions more turned over based on the demands of the provinces. And when it comes to childcare, the Premier was clear. He said, look, I want the childcare agreement that has already been concluded with Quebec and other provinces. So those are quite spectacular shortcuts which are not really founded. Now, I would say that with tonight's debate, even though I didn't hear everything before, I didn't hear anything else tonight. Mr. Trudeau didn't say he would support secularism. He looked at the leader of a party that speaks only for Quebec, and when he heard someone say that we were all racist, he did not flinch. I think that he could have showed a little bit more affection for Quebec tonight.
Question? Oui, thank you. Merci. Prochaine question. Lincoln J, Rebel News. Please go ahead.
Yes, Lincoln J, Rebel News. Mr. Blanchet, Trudeau calls people who disagree with him those people and threatens them with consequences. Are you the same way? Do you think there are millions of Canadians who simply don't deserve to participate in politics, journalism, or even in the economic life of Canada if they disagree with you on issues like vaccine passports?
Je ne réponds pas aux questions de Rebel News.
Mic number 2, please.
Monsieur Blanchet, je veux revenir
yes,
sur
Mr. Blanchet, I'd like to come back to what Mr. Legault said this morning. He practically didn't mention you during his presser. So how can you not see that as a disavowal when you are the defender of the priorities of the National Assembly? But Mr. Legault didn't even mention you. Is that not a disavowal? Well, I'm going to reveal a secret to you. The statistical probability that I become Prime Minister is very low. And the Premier is talking to people who, talking about people who could become Prime Minister. So he's disqualified the Liberals, the NDP, the Greens, and he said we need a minority government. So who would that minority government be? We are not the only ones who will ensure that. I think Quebecers have understood that. And the other interpretation is normal as part of this exercise, but it's not consistent with reality.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you.
On va se voir demain. Merci.
All right, that is the Bloc Québécois leader Yves-François Blanchet, obviously visibly upset with one of the first questions out of the gate that was under the theme of leadership and accountability. It was a question around Quebec's Bill 21, which of course prevents people who are civil servants, public servants, from wearing visible religious symbols in their place of work. It has become a controversial piece of legislation both inside Quebec and outside Quebec. And the question was really around how he feels about that piece of legislation in terms of what it says about Quebecers. Here's now the Liberal leader.
Got off the stage and discovered that she won the semifinals and is on her way to the finals. I think we're all very, very excited about her. Je veux juste féliciter Leila Fernandez.
I just want to congratulate Leila Fernandez for a fabulous match, which I couldn't see, but I'm really anxious to see the final of the U.S. Open.
Hi, Mr. Trudeau. It's Annie Bergeron-Oliver with CTV National News. Today, the other leaders criticized you and your government for putting political goals above the well-being of Canada's Afghan allies. Can you confidently say that this election, the need to campaign right across the country, in no way diverted your attention away from the situation in Afghanistan and in no way slowed down Canada's evacuation response?
Yes, I can confidently say that. I got regular briefings throughout the time, even as I was campaigning. Our ministers were fully engaged, and mostly our Canadian Armed Forces, our diplomats, our extraordinary consular affairs people continued to step up so we could get 17 flights out. We engaged with the Qataris to make sure that more flights were coming out as this recent one came out. We will continue to be there for the people of Afghanistan as Canadians expected to, and as Canadians open their homes and their communities to welcome 20, even 40,000 Afghan refugees over the coming months.
Mic number 2, please.
Bonjour, Monsieur Trudeau. Alexa pour Rebel
Good
News.
evening,
Donc, Monsieur Trudeau,
Mr. Trudeau.
revenir rapidement sur ce qui s'est passé hier.
I want to quickly go over what happened yesterday. You demonized one of the rare media outlets that doesn't receive any government money. You said that what we do is spread disinformation. If that were true, and if that were the case, the federal court would not have allowed us to be here today. I am a scientist, and I base myself on facts. My question is this. Israel is one of the most vaccinated countries in the world. They are now on their 4th booster, and they believe that people who've received 2 doses are fully vaccinated. My question is this. A number of Canadians do not wish to have a booster. Will you remove their privilege with respect to vaccine passports? And could you please answer my question as Prime Minister, or will you again demonize my media outlet? I shared my perspective on your organization yesterday, and I have nothing more to add to that.
Question from the phone, please. Operator, is there a question?
Thank you. The next question is from Mélanie Marquis, La Presse. À vous la parole.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Trudeau. Yesterday at the debate in French, you said you were a proud Quebecer, but today, Quebec, and particularly the secularism law and Bill 96, were attacked through the questions asked by the moderator, but you said nothing. Now, how do you rationalize what you were doing yesterday with what happened today? Well, I must say that the format did not allow me to respond immediately, but I think that Quebecers and Canadians know that I disagree with Bill 21. At the same time, I want to say that as a proud Quebecer, Quebecers are not racist.
Mic number 1, please.
Thank you. Benno Schwinghammer with the German press agency DPA. Prime Minister, you and others have been facing in the last weeks quite some hate on the campaign trail from a quite small but loud minority. How would you say to deal with these people? Listen to them or ignore them? And do you think this hate is here to stay?
I think one of the things we need to make sure we're doing quite clearly is making a distinction between those people who are showing up as mobs of anti-vaxxers and protesting everything with racist and misogynistic anti-science approaches, and those millions of Canadians who haven't yet got vaccinated because they still have questions and are unsure if it's right for them or unsure if they really need to. And our approach has been unequivocal on this. We believe that people who have done the right thing, as almost 80% of Canadians have, and gotten vaccinated, should be able to feel free from risk when they get on planes, when they get on trains, when they go into work, and that's why we're working as well with the provinces on vaccine credentials that will allow people to enjoy non-essential services without fearing that their kid, who is 7 and therefore not able to get vaccinated, could be exposed to someone who is. We have to be very, very clear that we are a country of science in which millions of people have stood up to do the right thing for themselves and for their neighbors, and continue to encourage that. It's unfortunate that Erin O'Toole can't even get his own candidates to get vaccinated, and pretends he wants 90% of Canadians to get vaccinated when he can't guarantee 90% of his candidates are vaccinated, as I said during the debate.
Mic number 2, please.
That was quite the softball question from my friend over there, so I'll try and ask a real one. Kean Bexley with thecountersignal.com. Mr. Trudeau, there has been some speculation that this poorly timed election has been called in part so that you can stop Parliament, the former Parliament, from procuring documents that they're constitutionally allowed to have in regards to the Communist Party of China infiltrating the Winnipeg lab that you are in control of, that you're responsible for. So I want to know, is it in Canada's national interest that you're protecting those documents? Is it in China's national interest that you're protecting those documents? Is it in your personal political interest that you're protecting those documents? What are you trying to hide from not just Canadians, but the world?
I think Canadians understand how important it is to protect national security and to ensure that parliamentarians can oversee the work of our national security agencies. That's why, as a commitment we made in 2015, we moved forward with something that Conservatives had always resisted: oversight by parliamentarians over our national security agencies. And the National Security and Intelligence Agency Committee of Parliamentarians actually works, and we granted them full access to all the highly secure documents so as they could see the decisions that our security professionals took and not put at risk the national security of Canada. Parliamentarians need to be able to do their work, which we have enabled, while we protect Canada's national security from China and from others.
Didn't answer the question.
We'll take a question from the phone. Vous allez prendre une question du téléphone. Opérateur.
Thank you. The next question is from Raymond Fillon, TVA. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Trudeau. You have been saying how proud you are of your agreement with Mr. Legault for several weeks, but he's used some rather harsh words against you and said you were dangerous for the Quebec nation. Do you see that as a betrayal? No, we know full well that Mr. Legault will always defend what he considers to be Quebec's interests. And as a proud Quebecer and as the Prime Minister of Canada, I will always defend the interests of all Canadians, including Quebecers. But when you think about what Quebecers want and about their values, well, I know that Quebecers do not want a Conservative government that will take them back to Mr. Harper's targets and propose new pipelines right across the country. I also know that Quebecers do not want to put assault weapons back in circulation that we banned last year. I know that Quebecers and Quebec families need more spots in daycare centres, and Mr. O'Toole will tear that up. Tear up the agreement I signed with Mr. Legault that's worth $6 billion that will create thousands of new spaces. I always want to work in partnership with the premiers of the provinces to deliver for all the citizens, but no one can expect the federal and provincial governments to always agree on everything.
Mic 1, please.
Hi, Mr. Trudeau. Abigail Beeman, Global News. When your opponents criticized you tonight on Afghanistan, you gave a vague comment about helping to bring more people home. I'm wondering, with the news of 43 Canadians coming out of Kabul, whether there's anything specific you can offer about how many more Canadians are left to help, whether the government will send planes, or whether there's any news about commercial air flights being able to leave there again.
As I've said, we have worked with our international partners on putting pressure on the Taliban to allow Canadians, permanent residents, and indeed anyone with Canadian travel documents to leave. And that's why over the past number of weeks we've been talking with the Qataris specifically to enable facilitating Canadians leaving, as they did just last night from Afghanistan. We know there is much much more to do, not just to get Canadians out, but to get the tens of thousands of Afghans that Canada is determined to welcome to a new home, new life in safety. And Canadians, quite frankly, are excited about welcoming to their communities across the country.
Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. This is all the time we have.
Merci beaucoup tout le monde.
All right, that was the Liberal leader, Justin Trudeau, taking a couple of questions from reporters after his performance at the debate. This is when we are hearing from all the leaders coming in and out quickly to take a handful of questions before they get back on the trail. Next leader up, I believe, is Jagmeet Singh. I will say this as we stand by and wait for Mr. Singh. First of all, that at issue will be here to decipher everything we've heard from this debate tonight. Let me just go back to some of the comments that the Bloc Québécois leader, though, made just before Mr. Trudeau. The Bloc Québécois leader had been looking for a way, I think, to bring Bill 21, and that is, again, the legislation that exists in Quebec to ban religious symbols from being worn in particular jobs and circumstances. He had been looking for a way to use that piece of legislation as a wedge issue between him and the rest of the country, to be frank. And so that's what he was doing when responding to one of the questions by the moderator of this debate, Chachi Curl. It is a controversial debate. It is a controversial piece of legislation, both in Quebec, where it is being contested by some groups, and outside of Quebec, where people are trying to understand why that is something that Quebec would want. And that was the nature of the question that was asked by the moderator. But Mr. Blanchet has decided to turn it into a political tool to his benefit by suggesting that it was a question meant to do what he would call Quebec bashing. He then went after some of his opponents for also not defending Quebec in that instance. But remember, everyone only had 45 seconds at that very moment. Okay, this is the NDP leader just coming up the stairs there at the Museum of History. He too will take a number of questions. And then I believe we'll be down to one more before we get back to At Issue and other news. Let's listen.
Hello, Mr. Singh. Thomas Lewis, Monocle magazine.
Sorry, say it again?
Thomas Lewis from Monocle magazine. We're
Yes.
a current affairs magazine based in the UK.
Cool.
It's lovely to meet you.
Pleasure.
I wonder, during the debate, you refused to respond directly to Justin Trudeau's criticisms that have been levied at your party's climate plan. And instead, you responded by saying that Justin Trudeau had had 6 years to do this, but hadn't done enough. I wonder whether you feel that you bear some responsibility for that for the last 2 years, in part, given that you have had a seat at the table, and if you'd wanted to shape and put pressure on the climate policy, you could have done that.
No, Mr. Trudeau was in power for 6 years. He has the worst record of all the G7 nations in terms of emissions. Every year that he's been prime minister, emissions have gone up. And the thing is, people end up paying the price. And that's why it's really important to point this out. People pay the price because it means the climate crisis gets worse. Because it means young kids who are worried about the future aren't left with any reassurance that things are going to get better. It's really bad for a lot of people. And I reject the notion that I reject his assertion. We've got a great plan, a bold plan, a plan that believes in investing in the solutions, which means investing in renewable energy, investing in public transit, a plan that believes that government has to be a part of the solution and has to take bold steps. And we cannot afford another 4 years of the inaction that we've seen from Mr. Trudeau. We simply can't. Appreciate it.
Mic number 1, please.
Bonsoir, Monsieur Singh. Jean-Sébastien
bonsoir.
Cloutier, Radio-Canada.
Oui,
ce matin, Monsieur Blanchet a refusé
categorically refused to participate in a coalition government. Are you prepared to say the same thing? No. If we're dealing with a minority government and I'm Prime Minister, I am prepared to look at this. And I want to be clear on this point. My goal is to fight for people. And that means investing in people. It means investing in health care. It means tackling the climate crisis. And as Prime Minister, I would be prepared to work with anyone who wants to work with me to make the changes that will help people and build a better future.
We'll take a question from the phone. Operator, is there a question from the phone, please?
Thank you. The next question is from Sheila Gunn Reid from Rebel News. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Mr. Singh, the polls show that your party is between 15 and 20%. No party here on the stage tonight is even close to representing a majority of Canadians. This is an absolute divided country. Yet when conservative journalists like me ask you fair questions on behalf of Canadians, you insult us and refuse to answer a single word. You are like a child putting your hands over your ears. Do you really think you can become Prime Minister by trying to freeze out any Canadian who disagrees with you? In your own riding, you only got 38% of the vote. Is this how you treat the other 62% of people who disagree with you?
No. Thanks so much.
Mic number 1, please. Sorry, mic number 2.
Hi, Mr. Singh. Olivia Stefanovich, CBC News.
Hi.
You were criticized in the debate for having a platform that lacks details. I'm wondering why that is. Why is your plan so general? And do you have any regrets about releasing a platform so early, even before this election was called, without the fine details for voters to read?
Not at all. We laid out a plan, a vision of what we stand for. And our plan is, not surprisingly, a lot of the things that we fought for before because Mr. Trudeau didn't do them. We still believe that people should have access to medication and they shouldn't worry about how they can afford it. We believe strongly that people shouldn't have to worry about whether they can afford or have coverage to get dental care. We absolutely believe that we need to make the ultra-rich pay their fair share. And these continue to be really pressing questions on the minds of lots of people who can't afford their medication, who can't afford dental care, and are worried about who pays for the recovery and who pays the price of this pandemic. We are the only party with a credible plan that says we're not going to cut the help that people receive, and we're not going to put the burden back on the people that have struggled. We are the only party that clearly states we're going to make the billionaires, the 44 richest billionaires in Canada who increased their wealth by $78 billion in this pandemic and don't pay their share, we're going to make them start paying their fair share. And that way we can invest it in people. I want to be clear though, Mr. Trudeau and Mr. O'Toole have ruled that out. They have voted against making web giants like Amazon pay their fair share. And that means they're either going to cut the help that you need or put the pressure back on the people that have already struggled. That's their plan. We have a different approach.
Mic number 1, please.
Yeah, good evening, Mr. Singh. Ryan Tumulty, National Post. You are voting tomorrow. Canadians are beginning to vote tomorrow.
Yes.
Your party has not released a fully costed platform at this point. Do you think it's fair to Canadians to ask them to vote for you without knowing what it will cost?
Yes, it is very fair, and I want Canadians to vote. I'm going to be voting tomorrow. And if you want different results, you're going to have to vote differently. If you want the things that we believe in and that we're putting out, you have to vote for it. So I want you all to get out and vote, please. What we're saying to Canadians is we are putting a choice to you all. And it's Canadians to decide this, but the choice is, can you afford another 4 more years of Mr. Trudeau, who has made a lot of promises and broken them, and that hurts people. When he promised to bring in pharmacare and breaks that promise and walks away from it, families continue to spend thousands of dollars on medications. People who need medication constantly have to make the choice between the medications that they need or paying the bills that they also have to pay. Those are choices that people continue to have to make because Mr. Trudeau breaks those commitments. So if you truly want universal pharmacare, if you want to see childcare delivered, if you want to see dental care, the best way to make that happen is to vote for New Democrats, because we will deliver. We are committed to it. We are the party that's been founded by workers and founded on the principles of healthcare that's public. We are going to do it. So if you need it and that's something that matters to you, you can trust us to deliver it.
And we will go to the phones. Opérateur, est-ce qu'il y a une question au téléphone? Is there a question on the phones?
Thank you. The next question is from Tonda McCharles from the Toronto Star. Please go ahead.
Hi, Mr. Singh. Thanks for taking my question. Just following up on the lack of detail in your platform on costs and timelines and stuff. The Liberals say that their childcare plan will cut fees in half next year, and they'll have $10 a day daycare by 2026. You're promising $10 a day daycare as well, but with no details. What's your timeline for that? And are you pegging the same amount of money, $30 billion?
So I think it's a really important question. What the Liberals have laid out, the plan is a good plan. The problem, and so we would want to meet or exceed that type of deadline. But the reality is, The real timeline of the Liberals is 30 years, because they started promising this idea, which we absolutely believe in, 30 years ago. And they have made people wait for 3 decades, despite having majority governments, despite having the ability to get things done. They have made people wait for 30 years. So I should say, we're not going to have the Liberal timelines of 30 years. Our timeline is going to be to get it done as quickly as possible, because we know that people need it. We believe in it. And I also put this to Canadians. If Mr. Trudeau really wanted to get it done, why did he call an election? Why didn't he continue to deliver, knowing that we would have supported any measure to bring in childcare? We could have got it done. He chose an election instead. Folks should consider that when they're making their choice in this election. If Mr. Trudeau wanted to do it, he could have. Why is he campaigning on it rather than actually delivering it, working on delivering it, making it happen?
Mic number 2, please.
Hi, Mr. Singh. Benjamin Stephen, The Charlatan, the Carleton University student newspaper. Tonight, Mr. Trudeau said your cynicism towards his government's reconciliation work is damaging efforts. How do you respond to this statement?
All right, well, hello there. We want to welcome viewers in Alberta and Saskatchewan on CBC television. You're watching The National after the debate. Federal leaders are taking questions right now. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh is at the microphone. Let's have a listen.
Breaking that promise to the people of Niskandiga, breaking that promise to little B, a 12-year-old girl who is fighting for clean drinking water in Canada in the 21st century, because she's never seen that in her life. She has never known what it's like to turn the tap on and to be able to drink the water. She is fighting for clean drinking water because Mr. Trudeau promised to deliver it 6 years ago and said it would happen by 2021 and then walked away from that commitment. While at the same time, in the beginning weeks of this pandemic, he leapt to provide $750 billion in backstops to the wealthiest banks in Canada. That's what's eroding public trust. That's cynical.
Thank you.
That's all the time we have. Merci beaucoup.
Thanks so much. I was ready for more. I was excited, but that's all the time we have. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, that is the NDP leader, Jagmeet Singh, taking a few questions from reporters after his performance here at the English debate. This, remember, was the only debate that happened in English throughout this campaign, as we are now about a week away from voting day. Polls open, advanced polls rather, open on Friday for 4 days in case you want to beat the rush. And a lot of people, too, have requested a special mail-in ballot as part of the Elections Canada offer for COVID protocols. But, of course, voting day here on the 20th. And while this debate many thought would be, a key turning point in a race that has become very, very tight, with the Conservatives now with a small lead ahead of the Liberals, and unclear who is going to form government at the end of this. It's not sure whether this debate is actually going to deliver on that promise of creating that turning point or momentum for anyone, and allowing voters to have a better idea of where they actually want to land with their vote. Annamie Paul, who we are waiting for now, the Green Party leader, has participated in one other debate. That was the French debate hosted by the consortium. Tonight, she did really her best at taking up as much space as she could on that stage, going after, for instance, the Bloc Québécois leader with the suggestion that he needed to get educated on the issue of racism. He interpreted that as an insult, but Annamie Paul said she invited him to spend some time with her, and that it wasn't an insult, but rather an invitation to have a conversation around racism. Annamie Paul at one point also went after Justin Trudeau, the Liberal leader, to which the Liberal leader responded very quickly, saying he didn't need to take caucus management lessons from Annamie Paul, who has had an enormous amount of problems managing her own party. She, of course, does not have a seat in the House of Commons. She's trying to get elected in Toronto Centre, something that is also proving to be a real challenge. She's up in a real fight against the Liberals there. But Annamie Paul's comments to the Liberal leader were about the number of women who have left his caucus, and indeed even his cabinet, because they had disagreements with him over a period of time. This is the last leader who will come up and take some questions from reporters before the night gets wrapped up. I should point out that many of these leaders are hitting the road even tonight to get back to their campaigns, and other leaders also traveling first thing in the morning. Annemie Paul, the last leader that will have to speak to reporters here before we wrap up with our at issue panel, who will have their take on the entire debate, as well as other news here at the National. All right, Annemie Paul, coming up that escalator of the Grand Hall of the Museum of History to take a number of questions from reporters about how she thinks she did tonight at this debate, her first in English as a federal leader of the Green Party. Let's listen in.
Take a question from mic number 1, please.
Oui, bonsoir. L'inaudible, la presse canadienne.
Je voulais revenir sur I wanted to come back to a comment you made to Mr. Blanchet, and that Mr. Blanchet considered to be an insult. When you said that you were offering to educate him, he saw it as an insult. Did you see it as an insult? Why do you think that Mr. Blanchet needs to be educated? Well, in fact, it was really just an invitation. My intent was not to insult Mr. Blanchet, and in fact I have made a number of invitations to Mr. Blanchet in recent months to come and talk to me, to get a better understanding of the reasons why people believe there's systemic discrimination either in Quebec or elsewhere in Canada. And the same thing when he said that it's okay to use the N-word in an educational context. I tried to explain that this hurts people. So many years ago, I decided that I would never believe or assume that someone is ill-intentioned without at least offering that person the opportunity to discuss things with me. That's how you build bridges. That's how you build understanding. So the invitation is still there, and it really was not at all intended to be seen as an insult.
Mic number 2, please.
Good evening, Ms. Paul. Andrew Lawton, True North. You've had members of your party in the past that have taken very aggressively anti-Israel positions. You've had some rhetoric in the party that I know has been criticized as going beyond that to anti-Semitic. You, as a Jewish party leader, have faced, as Justin Trudeau alluded to tonight, a lot of pushback from your own party members. Do you think the Green Party in its current form has an anti-Semitism problem?
I think that we have got to confront systemic racism, hate ideologies wherever they exist. I've said all along that there is no political party that is immune to that. In the case of my party, certainly there have been things that have been said that have been quite painful to me and my family, but I'm committed to doing the work, and I hope that anyone who is committed to doing the work towards understanding will do that. You know, these things are extremely public, and as I said also tonight, I know that certainly I would have liked these discussions and to have been further ahead, given that we're in an election, but at least they're happening. And I certainly hope for the next Jewish person in my position, I'm only the second one in Canadian history, that it will be a little bit easier. It's been difficult.
We will take a question from the phone lines now. Operator, is there a question from the phone?
Yes, thank you. The next question is from Leila Savage from La Converse. Your line is now open.
I've been told not to look up at the sound.
Hello?
Opérateur, est-ce qu'il y a une autre question? On n'entend pas personne.
Oui, bonjour.
Yes, good evening. Now, you were the only candidate who didn't talk about guns, and but I'm wondering whether it's important to you. I'm sorry, I didn't understand your question. Operator, could you ask that individual to repeat her question? We didn't hear it.
Madame Savage, s'il vous plaît, répétez votre question.
Please repeat your question, Ms. Savage. Yesterday, you were the only candidate that said we have to tackle the roots of the violence problem rather than just talking about guns, and I would like to know why that's important to you. Thank you for that question. Yes, everything is interconnected. I believe the pandemic has proven that. And if we're talking about banning assault weapons or handguns, well, that's just not enough. We have to tackle the problem at the root, because 3/4 of the weapons that are used in criminal acts are not from people who have a permit. They're from the black market. So ultimately, what we need to do is tackle it at the root and talk about discrimination, talk about poverty, talk about affordable housing, and talk about equity in our society. I think that's the way we can tackle the causes of criminal actions. And right now, we have an over-representation of Indigenous people and the black diaspora in our criminal justice system.
Good evening, Ms. Paul. Justin Ling, freelance. I want to hear you talk a bit about the exchange you had with Mr. Blanchet. As you noted earlier, you're the first racialized woman to wind up or to earn her way onto this debate stage. What was your reaction to sort of being hectored by the bloc leader over supposedly, I think in his words, as he said earlier, calling Quebecers altogether racist?
I'm not sure he said that in this.
Oh, he said it out here for sure.
Oh, did he? Okay. I wasn't watching it, so I don't know what he said, and I certainly didn't say that. I mean, I have a great respect for the people of Quebec. When I was on the debate stage with Mr. Blanchet, I was simply made the point that if he is interested in learning more about the experience of people like myself or those who have said very clearly that systemic discrimination exists, and let's keep in mind that the United Nations, their working group on people of African descent, said just a few years ago that systemic racism exists here. Our Supreme Court has also acknowledged that systemic racism exists, and we can see it in the data as well. So if you would like to learn more about our experience, then I, again, extend my hand in friendship and in understanding toward him.
Mic number 2, please.
Good evening. I'm Jenna Kokula with The Wire Report. Today, a member of your party tweeted that the Green Party was calling for a reversal of the CRTC's wholesale decision. I'm just wondering if this is an official party policy. And
sorry, which decision?
The wholesale decision.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, not as far as I know. I wasn't aware of that. I'd have to see the details, but based on what you're saying there, that would not be the case.
So then what are your thoughts on how to lower internet bills?
Oh boy, this is, we have a section in our platform dedicated to this. We know that this is one of these unfulfilled pieces of business. We need to invest in ensuring that every single community has access and affordable access to high-speed broadband service. We've seen during the pandemic, even in neighborhoods like Toronto Centre, which is deeply urban, that there are many people that simply don't have access to what we have to agree now is an essential service. We know that it's holding back rural and remote communities as well. And so in the next session of Parliament, it has to be a top priority to get that job done. And those who want to take a look at our platform will see our proposals for how we would do that. Certainly, we need to have a greater diversity of providers as well. That's part of the solution.
We'll go to the phones. Opérateur, est-ce qu'il y a une question au téléphone? Operator, is there a question from the phone?
Thank you. Yes, the next question is from David Menzies from Rebel News. Please go ahead. Your line is open.
Good evening, Ms. Paul. Hope you're doing well. Ms. Paul, clearly this debate is an insider's club for the political establishment. It banned Maxime Bernier of the People's Party of Canada, even though he is ahead of the Bloc Québécois and your own party, the Green Party, in the polls. It banned me and Rebel News from even reporting until the federal court said that was illegal. Why have you not spoken out against this? Don't you think all voices should be heard in Canada?
Thank you for the question. We did have an opportunity to provide recommendations to the Commission establishing the rules for the debates, and certainly from our perspective, having more debates is incredibly important. It is incredibly disappointing that we only had 2 hours to discuss so many important issues. We spent, I think, 10 minutes or 20 minutes talking about Indigenous peoples, for instance. I don't think we spent even 10 minutes speaking about Afghanistan. So we can see what this new system has created. It's created less opportunities for people in Canada to get to know the parties, to get to know the leaders of those parties, to get to know our positions. That's not a good thing for democracy. In the case of those parties who are not included, I think we do need to find a way for small parties who are trying to establish themselves to have a way of participating and getting known. Otherwise, we do have the same old parties constantly monopolizing the discussion.
That's all the time we have. C'est tout le temps que nous avons. Merci beaucoup. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup.
All right, that is the last scrum with the last leader, Annamie Paul, the leader of the Green Party. As we wrap up our debate coverage here, let me bring in the CBC's David Cochran, who's been standing by. They all came up very, very quickly, David, so we didn't have time to talk really in between. My apologies for that. Maybe I'll go back to the Bloc Québécois leader and some of what he had to say around how he interpreted his experience of Quebec and why he might be saying those things, perhaps more particularly, David.
Yeah, there's a couple of things that have happened today in this election, Rosie. I think that it's thrown a lot of volatility into the dynamic in the race in Quebec. And it started earlier today when François Legault, the Premier of Quebec, came out and really expressed a preference for the platform and the approach to Quebec in particular of Conservative leader Erin O'Toole. He's not happy with the daycare policy that will scrap a $6 billion deal that would send money to Quebec, but says that he is quite happy with that Mr. O'Toole, unlike the other federal party leaders, would respect provincial jurisdiction. And this caused a little bit of confusion within the ranks of a lot of the political parties in Ottawa today, trying to dissect how this might play there, because, you know, if Mr. if Mr. Legault is expressing a preference for the Conservatives, that could cause damage to the Bloc Québécois. They tend to fight over some of the same votes. This could defeat Liberals in the Quebec City region, or it could help Liberals in the suburbs of Montreal if the Conservatives come up to take away the support of the Bloc and then drive the Liberals up the middle. So it was viewed by the federal parties as a bad day for Blanchet. This debate handed Yves-François Blanchet a gift, in that he was essentially accused of supporting racist and discriminatory policies right out of the gate by the moderator in this debate. It is going to be played aggressively that way in a lot of the Quebec media, the Quebecor papers in particular. And you saw Mr. Blanchet. We are accused of racism. We are accused of xenophobia. This will make people in Toronto happy. He has wanted to put Bill 21 and secularism and the Quebec identity into this debate as a wedge. He's been struggling to do it to some degree because the other parties weren't taking the bait, and Premier Legault has stayed a little bit on the sidelines on this. The English debate tonight could have really seismic implications in Quebec based on the comments of the Premier today and how that set the stage, and then how Mr. Blanchet is playing this now this evening.
All right, David, thank you so much for that great analysis. I should point out that in Quebec, the race is still very tight, primarily between the Bloc Québécois and the Liberals. We'll have more smart analysis in just a moment, because Andrew, Chantal, Althea, and Elamine will be back. They'll give you everything you need to know. I'll be back with that issue right after the break.
All right, Rosie, we have a lot more ahead on this special edition of The National, because tonight is really about your vote.
Yeah, no doubt. That's why we are going to check in with our undecided voters. Did tonight change anything for them? We're back in 2.
Every time I came out of my house early on in the pandemic to talk directly to Canadians, I told them I'd be there for you. And that's exactly what we've done.
Mr. Trudeau is borrowing every day $424 million, and he's causing an inflation crisis.
We demanded 22 times in Parliament for Mr. Trudeau to expand his paid sick leave.
Lots of big issues facing the next government that affect every person living in this country. Tonight's critical debate was the last one, the only one in English before Election Day. A lot of jockeying from all the leaders to get what they think are the winning issues out front and in front of Canadians. It's Thursday, happily, and I'm here with a special post-debate edition of At Issue. For the record, I would have made them come no matter what day it was, because we need them to talk about the format, the content, and the way this may or may not change the race. So let's get into it. Joining me now, Chantal Hébert, Andrew Coyne, Althea Raj, and Elamine Abdul-Mahmoud. Good to see everybody. I'm going to start. I just want to do a quick go-round, on what we thought of that debate and whether that is, we've all put a lot of emphasis on it being potentially a turning moment for this election campaign, if it was that. I'll just go through you all quickly. Chantal?
It wasn't the kind of turning moment of the free trade debate, for instance, with the exchange between John Turner and Brian Mulroney. And by the way, Brian Mulroney lost that debate and then recouped over the 10 days remaining and won a majority government. So debate impacts are overrated. But I think that Aaron O'Toole had the kind of night that he needed. It's the only English language debate. And that probably makes this a difficult night looking at the two frontrunners for Justin Trudeau.
Althea.
I actually think that every leader performed adequately. There was enough there for every partisan to think that their person won or did very well. Nobody really suffered any knockout blows. I don't really think that matters, though. I think that people got their message across. I think that Mr. O'Toole was able to showcase that Mr. Trudeau has some vulnerabilities when it comes to the economy and the type of, if you're looking for someone who, wants to get back to balance, that, he might be your candidate. I think Mr. Trudeau, towards the end especially, really made that kind of like passionate plea saying, the NDP doesn't care whether there's a conservative government or progressive government, but you should care, and there are extreme differences within parties. Mr. Trudeau needed to make that. Mr. Singh was quite, his charming self. I think that there was lots there for progressive voters who are looking to vote for somebody other than Mr. Trudeau. We'll find that in Mr. Singh. And Annamie Paul, who we hadn't really seen during this entire campaign, finally put the Green Party on the map. Like, is it enough? I don't know. The voters will decide. And Mr. Blanchet, finally found the wedge issue that he was looking for, frankly. Much like in 2019, he was looking to pick fights. I know this personally from what happened in 2019. But I think he seemed even more ferocious in his defense of himself and Quebec. And we'll
get to that in just a second. I want to just quickly get everybody to have a turn. Yeah, Elamine?
I've seen a lot of Liberal partisans on Twitter who are very thrilled to say that Justin Trudeau won that debate. I don't see where they're drawing the evidence from. The Prime Minister looked uncomfortable on that stage. That format did not work for him. It was a very different energy and vibe compared to, the orientation he was trying to present when he first launched his campaign, on a lot of hope and optimism of like, look, we are going to come through this COVID thing, and then we're going to turn the economy around. That was not there. He was angry. He looked rattled at times. And so to me, he seemed like he was thrown off course.
Okay, Andrew.
We often don't know the impact of debates until days or weeks afterwards. It's not about who won, but who registered an impact with the voters, what voters learned about them. Aaron O'Toole had the most to gain in that sense, in that he's still very little known by a lot of the voters, and this was a chance for him to really introduce himself to them. And I think he came across as normal, which is not always the case for conservative leaders. He was calm, he was unflappable. The Prime Minister, I should say the Liberal leader, Justin Trudeau, was under a great deal more pressure, came under more attacks. And I said at the beginning of this election that the early election call would become the lens through which everything he says or does is viewed. And that's increasingly has proved to be the case. it not only raises questions about his character and judgment, but it's increasingly being used to talk about the incompletes on his report card. Why did you call the election when you still had to do X or Y? And you could see he was rattled by it tonight. And, you know, Marshall McLuhan was right. It's a cool medium. You need to come across calm and still, and he was jumpy and over-caffeinated.
Mind you, I
was going to play the clip of Mr. Yes, go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead, Chantal. Yeah.
No, I was just going to say I watched
go
Paul Martin debate against Stephen Harper in 2004, and he was jumpy, Paul Martin, and Stephen Harper was cool and collected. He was rarely jumpy, and a lot of people called the debate for Stephen Harper, but 2 or 3 days later, to Andrew's point, every poll showed that Paul Martin's body language had actually translated into this guy could lose and this other guy could become your prime minister. So it is really hard to just go on the optics of the evening of and say this will turn out well for the person who managed to be calm and collected.
Yeah, and I agree with you, Andrew. We usually don't know as we're speaking whether this has much impact, and we'll know maybe a little bit later. I was going to play the clip, but I'm running out of time, so I won't. But Mr. Blanchet was asked a question about Bill 21 and Bill 96, and it was suggested in the question, it was asked in the question, quote, why your party also supports discriminatory laws. Mr. Blanchet has now turned that into a question about the rest of Canada thinking that Quebec is racist. That is not what the question said. But in Quebec, that issue of Bill 21 is viewed through the lens of secularism. So again, a quick go around from everyone on whether this gives him opportunity and changes everything. And again, I'll start with Chantal, then Andrew.
Okay, so this is the lead story about the debate on La Presse's front page on the web, Le Devoir's front page, and probably tomorrow all of the Québécois papers in Quebec. So, and it is all about the question. I don't think you can get that much mileage out of it because this was an exchange between a moderator and a participant. It wasn't some other leader, Erin O'Toole or Justin Trudeau, who said that. That being said, it may be bad news for Erin O'Toole because this is a day of good news in Quebec for O'Toole, with François Legault saying he's more my guy than Justin Trudeau. But if you're going to rally around Blanchet because he was assaulted in the name of Quebec, those same voters that O'Toole needs may stick with Blanchet because of that.
Andrew, and then I got to take a break. We'll come back.
He was certainly working it for all it's worth. You know, if Erin O'Toole or Justin Trudeau were asked about a policy of theirs that was described as discriminatory, they wouldn't be able to fall back on the, oh, you're bashing me, you're bashing my people. They'd have to answer the question. So it's a tried and true tactic amongst Quebec nationalists, and we can see Mr. Blanchet working it for all it's worth at the end of what would otherwise have been a bad day for him. So I don't blame him for it. He seized on any opportunity he could find. And yes, we're going to be dealing with it for the next few days probably.
Elamine, you can have 20 seconds, and I'll start with you, Althea, on the way back.
I mean, we do have to put this all in the context of trying for days, weeks at this point to make Bill 21 a wedge issue and failing at that. There's not a lot of breath, you know, in terms of that issue because the other parties were just not taking the bait over and over again. And so when we get to this place and the moderator gives Blanchet that opportunity, you know, he's going to get a week's worth of coverage out of it. It just so happens to be the last week of the campaign, so that makes it all the more potent.
Okay.
I should say I agree with
Time for
Mr.
a quick
Blanchet.
break, I'm sure. Well, I got to take a quick break. I got to take a quick break. I'm sorry. I will come back. You will have a little bit more at issue. I know. We wish we could have 30 minutes. So does everybody. We'll be back. When we come back, Andrew, Chantal, Althea, and Elamine will talk a little bit more about the debate you just watched, a special edition of The National after the debate. Next.
There is a crisis hitting families, and Mr. Trudeau seems completely oblivious to that. Bills are going up.
Mr. O'Toole can't even convince his party that climate change is real because they voted against that.
A little back and forth there between the two leaders who are neck and neck in the polls. We're back with a special post-debate edition of At Issue with Chantal, Andrew, Althea, and Elamine. Althea, I'll start with you because you didn't get a second chance there in the first round. The exchanges between Erin O'Toole and Justin Trudeau were interesting. I'm not sure that Justin Trudeau was as effective tonight as he was in French in terms of building this closing argument for the Canadian people around Erin O'Toole. What are your thoughts on how he did with that narrative tonight?
Yeah, the format did not allow a lot of one-on-one interactions. It was so timed that, he would speak and there would be an attack, but there would be no rebuttal until there was like two other leaders had spoken. So it kind of took the all the energy, momentum out of that exchange, and we didn't really see so many one-on-ones. I think that people who don't follow politics are probably not going to get that much from this debate. I'm not sure how much you could really learn and glean, but there were a couple of attacks. I think Erin O'Toole's note that Mr. Trudeau is good for ambition but not targets, I think can cut both ways for those on the center right and even those progressives who think that he promises a lot of great things but doesn't deliver, whether that's on getting back to balance or whether it's on building a pipeline expansion, which he has been heavily criticized in progressive circles. So unfortunately, I don't think Mr. Trudeau was able to make the case that he wanted to, that voting for the NDP leader is a risk because it could give you Erin O'Toole. I think that's what he needed to do, and I don't think he made that case.
Yeah. Chantal.
I think the people who have set up formats like this last night and tonight will need to think long and hard about the fact that what passes for substance are actually attack lines and how that serves the Canadian voter. Because if you look on Twitter, if you listen to what we are saying, we're basically picking good lines. And I'm troubled by the fact that this does not advance in any intelligent way information that voters should have before they make choices. And on that basis, I'm not blaming any leader here, but they may want to think together that they don't want to submit themselves to something that makes them look more stupid than they all are.
Yeah, 45 seconds is not a lot of time because I'm making you all do that right now. Elamine, and then a quick last word from Andrew.
I mean, I do have to say that they did use those opportunities to sort of at least begin to build up towards those lines. And then you see the other leaders, begin to knock down that momentum. It is theater. It is, pro wrestling. It is not really, serving to the audience who's trying to watch it. I think if you're, waiting until after Labor Day to begin to engage with this election, and this is your first point of engagement, I'm willing to take you out for a pizza, if you made it past the first hour, because it was hard to watch. It was hard to watch, and we are in the business of doing this, and it was still hard to follow this discussion and say, yeah, we're getting something valuable out of this. That was the hardest part, I think.
You would have missed me if you hadn't hung it past the first hour. Okay, Andrew, you got about 30 seconds there.
As bad as the format was, the core of the problem is there's only one debate. And the reason there's only one debate is that the Federal Leaders Commission, having been set up to take it away from the networks, gave it back to the networks. The networks only want to have the one debate. Maybe the parties only want to have but one debate. This should not be allowed. We should have multiple debates. The networks should have to show them as a condition of license. They get to run rather lucrative procedures. In return for that, every 4 years, they should have to give up a few hours of airtime so the public can actually get decent, watchable debates.
I got to go. Remember 2015 where we had like 17 debates? Those were the days. Thank you all. Thank you for staying up late. Thank you for thinking on your feet. I appreciate it. That's That Issue for tonight. Chantal, Andrew, Althea, and Elamine. Adrienne and Andrew, back to you in Toronto.
Okay, thank you so much, Rosie. Up next, we are going to hear from our undecided voters.
Did they hear anything tonight that helped them make a decision? We'll be right back. Welcome back. Like any other election, some Canadians just have not been able to make up their minds yet about which party to vote for.
Yeah, but the debate, always a key opportunity for parties to convince them that their way is the right way. So we invited 4 undecided voters to watch with us tonight.
My name is Shannon Carmen. I am from Victoria, BC, and I am an undecided voter because the environment is a massive priority for me, and I'm not convinced that any of our leaders are strong enough to make the big changes I feel are necessary.
My name is Ruth Altaya. I'm from Toronto, Ontario, and I am an undecided voter because I care way too much about economic inequality and don't think that any of the federal leaders have done enough to speak on this issue.
My name is Lisa Liu. I'm from Calgary, Alberta. I am an undecided voter in this year's federal election. I would like to learn more about each leader's plan to battle climate change.
My name is Ryan Dewick. I'm from Winnipeg, and I'm undecided because I want to hear what the candidates' plans around healthcare are.
All right, so here they are. Hey there, everybody. Shannon, Lisa, let me guess, we got Ruth and we got Ryan. Thank you for sticking with us tonight. So I know you all voted in 2019. You were able to make the call then. This time, though, it's still a little rough. You're a bit uncertain. You're looking for leadership. So in 15-ish seconds each, can you give us a sense of what's either struck you as a high point or a low point of this debate? Shannon, let's start with you.
The Bloc Québécois leader needed to hear a French word in English, and he listened to Trudeau, and it was like this beautiful moment of sort of compatriots talking with each other. I would love to see more of that in the future.
Okay, interesting. Lisa?
What struck me as a high point was actually the Green Party leader's suggestion for a cross-party climate action task force, which I think is a wonderful idea of, multi-partisanship.
Okay. Ruth?
Mine is actually going to be the flip of the high points and actually say that there was such a hyper-partisanship that Annemie Paul was talking about that was taking place on stage, people interrupting each other, and it could have been a lot more calm and collective.
Yeah, well, certainly my heart was pounding trying to catch up with all of it. I suspect some popcorn was thrown at the screen at times. Ryan, what about for you? A high point or a low point?
I guess it was a low point, more of a missed opportunity type point, and talking about affordable housing, and there was really no mention of like an unhoused experience of unhoused people.
Right. So hey guys, can we go through maybe issue by issue on a few counts? And speaking of popcorn throwing against the screen, I think it was during the climate change part of the debate. There are a lot of fingers being pointed, a lot of fists in the air among you guys. Shannon, maybe I could start with you. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, you voted Green in the last election, right? And so I'm wondering, from your take on this, I mean, did you see something from any of the leaders, but including Annemie Paul, on energy or carbon targets, green energy? What did you hear that you liked?
Well, yeah, I mean, I love the fact that the environment was such a massive part of it. It was the first thing that they talked about compared to previous years. I love that Annemie Paul was talking about how essential nonpartisan approaches are, coming at it like COVID. But I didn't like how it was almost considered a separate issue from housing or inequality, because all of these issues are connected. They're talking about how society functions and how we need to change how society functions on a fundamental level. But big change can only come with agreement, and all I see is a huge crisis of agreement between all of these people. And with so many narratives swirling around, I wanted to hear a story, a really inspiring vision from one of our candidates tonight, and I just didn't see that. I wanted to see Churchill levels of inspiration, about how England changed its entire economy within a few months during the war. We need to start thinking like that. We can't just keep going on with business as usual. I felt like Annemie Paul was the only one who really conveyed that urgency to me.
Okay, so on your frustration, I think a lot of people feel frustration at this point in the election. I'm curious about you, Lisa, because you mentioned climate in your first go around there, and I know, living in Calgary, you had the smoky skies this summer. I know that energy is also really important to you. You voted Conservative in 2019. COVID-19. So when you heard Aaron O'Toole tonight, what did you make of what he had to say about climate change?
So my main takeaway, I think, between 2019 and now is seeing all of the physical weather pattern changes. I think I'm getting more of a sense of the urgency of climate change. So the issue has definitely become more important in my mind. And I guess I don't feel like I heard from any of the leaders in all of their climate policies how they want to support the energy industry to transition away from fossil fuels into a more renewable future. Because I do believe that Calgary and Alberta and the oil and gas and the energy industry have a big role to play in our future energy transition.
Ryan, you voted Liberal in 2019. You talked about affordability being one of your top issues. I know pharmacare, also another big one. We heard a great question from Rosie during that debate on that matter. What did you hear on that front? Was it enough to change your decision or to inform it even?
I think especially on like pharmacare, there wasn't much. There was a lot of fighting back and forth about who did what and who plans what, but no one seemed to have any sort of plan to kind of sway me. I guess the fact that the NDP tried to introduce it at some point during the last 2 years and it was voted down, that kind of sways me in a direction or two, but I'd still, that question wasn't answered for me.
I see you nodding a little bit there, Ruth. What I know about you is that you're the person in the friend group who sends out the cheat sheets to everybody politically to say, all right, guys, this is what I heard. Right, there they are. So I'm wondering,
I took notes.
What is in those cheat sheets for tomorrow about what you heard in terms of affordability, but how much it costs to live in this country, especially for people in marginalized communities?
I'm very sad and disappointed that I didn't hear much. Just like my fellow undecided voters here, there's just been this continuous conversation about what the past administration hasn't done enough of, or what one person needs to do, or what the other needs to do. And I didn't think that the parties actually highlighted what they were going to do about the issues, what they were going to do for marginalized communities. It could have been a great opportunity for Justin Trudeau to bring up the $200 million endowment fund for the Black community that the Liberal budget was talking about recently, and he didn't do that, you know? I was expecting a lot more. So not much gotten from this debate, just a little bit of inner fighting, but hopefully I get to do some more research and see what I can give to my friends.
Well, so maybe this is the point that we ought to end on, right? Because we heard from the At Issue panel that one of their big criticisms of this debate was the very one that you folks are raising here, that it wasn't easy to get substance out of it. So maybe if we can kind of go down the line here. I mean, I see you all shaking your heads, or nodding your heads rather, but are you any closer to moving out of that undecided camp and into a zone where you can kind of confidently make a decision? Shannon, maybe we can start with you.
Yeah, I mean, I felt the same as everybody else. I wished that I could have seen some of them saying, hey, here, you guys did this, you know, the Liberals did this. I liked how you did that for childcare. I would do it this way for this reason. You know, like that constructive criticism rather than just this gotcha stuff. It just seems so childish. So I mean, I would really love to just see them getting together to talk like adults. I don't know which one. I don't think I got anything from this other than the Green Party leader, I feel, is the strongest, and her party is in the worst.
Okay, and just like the debate, we have 5 seconds left for everybody. Still undecided or getting closer? Start with you, Lisa.
Still undecided. My only takeaway from the evening was it was a lot of fun to watch the debate with the rest of this panel.
Okay, very quickly. Ruth?
Still undecided, moving towards probably one. I'm moving a little bit, but still a little undecided, yeah.
Yes or no? Undecided, Ryan?
A little undecided, but I've moved a little bit towards an answer.
All right. Shannon, Lisa, Ruth, Ryan, pleasure to have you with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So a lot of Canadians may be rethinking how they vote during a pandemic. So next, we will take you through all the ways you can cast your ballot if you'd like to avoid the lines on Election Day.
Yes, you are watching a special edition of The National after the debate.
Welcome back. For some of you, this election won't be the first time you cast a pandemic ballot. Several provinces and one territory have gone to the polls during the last 2 years, but for others, voting in the time of COVID-19 is still pretty new. So we asked our Meg Roberts to break down some of the options for those who want to skip the crowds on Election Day.
It's going to be one of the most unique elections to date. Canadians are going to the polls in the middle of a pandemic. Now, it's hard to tell what Election Day will look like, so if you want to vote but don't feel comfortable doing it the day of, we've got you covered. First of all, the basics. You have to be 18 years or older to vote, and you have to be a Canadian citizen. If you fit that criteria, you're good to go. The first option, and one that might be most familiar to Canadians, advanced polls. Those start on September 10th and run until the 13th. Now, to find the address and time of an advanced poll open near you, you can check your voter information card, or you can go on Election Canada's website. If you're not comfortable seeing or speaking to anyone during this election process in this pandemic election, most Canadians have an option for that too. You can request a special ballot that will be mailed to your home. The ballot will have a blank space. Write the name of the candidate you're voting for. Your vote won't count if you just write the party's name. Mail it back using a pre-addressed return envelope provided in your voting kit. The marked ballot has to make it to Election Canada before polls close on September 20th. But you can also drop it off in a ballot box at any polling station in your riding on Election Day. If you feel like this is the best option for you, you have until September 14th to apply for a special ballot, so you better get on it soon. Lastly, and maybe the easiest option, you can pop into your local Elections Canada office during opening hours anytime before September 14th at 6 p.m. All you need is your address and identification, and you'll fill out a special ballot. These voting options might ease some pandemic-related concerns, and you're not alone in feeling that way. Elections Canada expects 2 to 3 million electors to vote by special ballot, mainly by mail. No matter what your thoughts are on the timing of this election, it's important on September 20th that you get your say. Meg Roberts, CBC News, St. John's.
Now, if you're watching us on CBC Television, that's the National for this September 9th. Thank you very much for watching.
And if you're joining us on CBC News Network or CBC Gem, our special coverage continues in a moment.
I like this moment music, by the way. We'll also have more of tonight's top stories, including vital surgeries suddenly canceled in Alberta as hospitals deal with the fourth wave. We'll be right back.